For WRFI Community Radio, I'm Felix Tietelbaum. On Wednesday, September 3rd, the candidates for Ithaca City Court Judge were presented at the Tompkins County Public Library in a forum sponsored by the Tompkins County League of Women Voters. The forum was moderated by the League's president, Kay Sharp. Candidates Seth Peacock, Christine Shaw, and Rick Wallace, all Democrats, will face off tomorrow, September 9th, in the Democratic primary. As the Democrats are running unopposed, the primary will determine the Ithaca City Court Judge for the next 10 years. WRFI Community Radio is proud to bring you this exclusive broadcast of the event as we did the August 26th Judges Forum held at the Greater Ithaca Activity Center.
Before we get started, I would just like to say a couple of things about the League. First of all, we're the oldest league in New York State. We've been in business for about 60 years now. We have about 100 members, but we're always looking for more members. So on the back side there, we've got forms that you could fill out or take with you and send them back to us in the mail. Tonight we're doing questions only through cards, so if you have a question, please write out a card and someone just put it up and someone will pick it up and bring it to me. The format for tonight is we will have the candidates each give a 3-minute opening statement. We will then open it to questions, and I have a lot already, so I'm going to say I apologize. We probably won't get to all of them, but I'm going to try to hit all the subject matters that are on the cards. And then we have the candidates do a 2-minute closing. So that's how we're going to structure this evening. It's important for you to know that the League of Women Voters has specific rules on how judicial forums can be run. So that may be one of the reasons why I wouldn't ask a question. The issues that you can bring to the table are, one, what party they're with, their qualifications, their experience, and their philosophy about court. But we couldn't ask a question about a specific case, how would you have handled that, or something like that. So it's only about qualifications, experience, and philosophy. I've given our candidates numbers so that they know who is going to get to speak first. And we're going to open with Seth Peacock. Yeah, that'd be nice. Turn your cell phones off. She can't even.
Would you like to come up here so you can hear better?
I will. I'll try my best. Should I begin?
Yes, please.
Hi, everyone. My name is Seth Peacock. Recently, she had a name change to Judge Peacock, and I was appointed by Mayor Savante Myrick a few months ago to take over for Judge Rossiter, who retired after approximately 20 years as Ithaca City Court Judge. I'm also supported and endorsed by Judge Rossiter as well, as many you may know, and also there's handouts in the back detailing her reasons for supporting me in taking over the seat that she held so long. I want to create a new vision for Ithaca City Court. It involves a vision based on relationships. The first relationship is the relationship to the law, remaining faithful to the law, honoring the law. That's the first principle any good judge has to maintain, is honoring the law, whether you agree with it, disagree with it, following precedent, but you have to honor the law. The second, and just as equal relationship, is the relationship with the community. The relationship with the community is key because if you think about it, Nobody lives a law-abiding life only because they're afraid of going to jail. You live a law-abiding life because you don't want to hurt people. You don't want to embarrass your family. You understand that there's a social compact that we all agree to. So just simply having this threat of jail, which is there, and as judge, will certainly be used in my court, but you also have to find other ways. You have to form these relationships so people feel that they belong, and when they feel they belong, they're less likely to harm one another. What are the relationships? The first one is establishing a relationship with our young people. So what I've done, and I've been offering specific plans, is since I was a school board member for 10 years, I have many contacts with the school district, and I've invited every 5th grade class to come take a tour of the court, meet the judge, learn about the court. It'll be tied to their curriculum, but also my real evil plan is to form relationships with young people, giving them a positive experience with the court, with Judge Peacock, so that as they grow up, and as some of us know, teenagers sometimes do dumb things, I'll have a relationship with them if they become teenagers and commit a petty larceny, shoplifting, something like that. I'll be a more effective judge if I have a relationship with them that has grown throughout the years from this 5th grade field trip to when they're a teenager. The idea is that if they appear before me on a simple shoplifting case, they'll feel a little bit of embarrassment and maybe internalize some of the behavior and realize that they're connected to this community and hopefully think, he was so nice to me in 5th grade, he doesn't seem too happy with me now. I have many other ideas, but my time is up now, and I'll respect the time and allow the other candidates to give you their hopes and wishes for this position. So thank you.
Thank you. I'm Rick Wallace. I'm a candidate for Ithaca City Judge. It's interesting sitting here in this room and looking out this window. When I was a 12, 11-year-old boy, this wasn't the library, it was Woolworth's. And at this end of Woolworth's was a cafeteria. And I remember walking down this street with a fellow named Greg Roll, an old Ithaca native who actually started out a magazine on the south side called the Wheat Street Independent, back when Cleveland Avenue was little known as Wheat Street. And we'd come into the diner and we'd have sodas. And that was a big part of my youth, being downtown in the city, which I've grown to love. I'm a third-generation Ithacan. Went to Boynton, went to Ithaca High School. In fact, when I went to, this is dating myself, when I went to Boynton, it was what is now BJM. I was the last class out of that building and the first class into the new Boynton. To Ithaca High School, played a lot of basketball. It was my passion. That's what kept me downtown a lot. My family had a scrap business. The old-timers called them junkyards. Now they call them recycling centers, but I spent a lot of hours out in the yard with the workers, cutting metal and sorting brass and copper. Then I became a lawyer. And my entire career as a lawyer, all 24 years, has been right here in the city of Ithaca, practicing in the city of Ithaca. I was a former AFCU board member, Alternatives Federal Credit Union, 20 years with Offender Aid and Restoration, 9 years as the president of that board, helping inmates in the Tompkins County Jail. I'm a member of the New York State Bar Association, the member of a special committee of the New York State Bar Association called the Lawyer Assistance Committee, which runs the Lawyer Assistance Program out of Albany. We help lawyers and judges throughout the state who are impaired by addiction, alcoholism, obsessive or compulsive disorders, internet, sex, gambling. Suicide rates in our profession are high, and for many, many years I've been working with that outfit to help lawyers and judges obtain and maintain recovery. I was the founder of the Tompkins County Bar Association Lawyers Helping Lawyers program when I was the president of our local bar association. I'm a member of the New York Northern District of New York Federal Court Bar Association, practicing in federal court, the New York Academy of Trial Lawyers, the New York State Defenders Association, and also a member of the Lawyers Assistance Trust and a chairman at my synagogue, Temple Bethel, here in Ithaca. Running for judge was not on my career list. Many different sections of the community approached me a year or two ago and said, Rick, you need to go do this. You have a specific set of skills that no other candidate has or could possibly have without doing what you've done for the last 24 years. And after serious cajoling, but not that serious because they convinced me. I really do have that unique experience. I agreed to run for this job, knowing that it would mean that for 10 years I'd have to give up my successful private law firm. And so here I am at the old Woolworths cafeteria asking for your vote.
Christine, and we want to apologize. There's an E on Christine's first name.
The last name is what's on all the signs, so as long as you get that part right, I'm okay. Good evening. My name is Christine Shaw, and I'm running for Ithaca City Court Judge. I want to thank the League of Women Voters for putting this together this evening and for all the good work that you do in our community. I also want to thank the library for providing this space for this. I also want to thank all of you for coming. And I'm not sure that I'm going to get this opportunity, so I'm going to take a moment to say thank you to all the people that have supported me in this race. It has been a humbling experience. I was just talking to Rick about it beforehand, to have people come out of the woodwork and say, we believe in you. I will stuff envelopes for you and knock on doors and send money to your campaign. And it's been truly humbling, and I'm honored to have their support. I also want to thank my wife and my kids because it hasn't been easy. So I opened an office and started practicing law in Ithaca 12 years ago when I graduated from Cornell Law School. Sue and I raised our kids here. They're both away at college now. We moved here 16 years ago so I could attend Cornell Law School. But we didn't actually, I got into a bunch of law schools, and we didn't choose Ithaca because of Cornell. We chose Cornell because of Ithaca. We came here the very first time and realized this was a really cool place. And we wanted to raise our family here, and we wanted to live here and be a part of this community. And it's been, I think we made the right choice, and I'm pleased to be a member of this community. I've had a law office downtown for the past 12 years. I opened up downtown right after law school, and with the help of some of the other attorneys in the community that provided mentoring and assistance, got going on my own. We moved downtown about a year ago, and that's been a really good experience as well. I'm really pleased and honored to have been screened and assessed by the Independent Judicial Election Qualifications Committee, and they determined that I was qualified for election to Ithaca City Court Judge, and I appreciated that process. It was arduous and thorough. I was also screened, as were the other candidates, by the Ithaca City Democratic Committee's ad hoc committee, and I received their recommendation and the endorsement of the City Democratic Committee. I'm also extremely pleased to have the endorsement of 29 of the attorneys that currently are practicing in Ithaca City Court, not in Ithaca City Court, in the courts in Ithaca. One of the issues that is close to my heart, and part of the reason why I decided to run in this race, is because there are currently no women sitting on any of the benches in the city of Ithaca. When Judge Rossiter retired, she was the last one. For years, she had been the only one. And I was raised that when something like that bothers you and you've got an issue with it, then you need to step up. So here I am.
Well, I want to just ask, can those of you in the back hear? Okay. And we do have some seats. If you want to take this moment to sit down, please feel free to. They're right down in here. Okay, as I had said, there are numerous questions about certain topics, and so I've got a pile here for one topic, and that is Christine, and then Rick, and then Seth. A huge amount of cases in Ithaca City Court are non-criminal. What is your experience with all the other types of cases that come into city court? And try to be specific about the type and the volume you've handled.
City Court does handle primarily criminal cases. Non-criminal cases would include traffic cases. I've handled a high volume of traffic cases, probably hundreds of them, through different venues. And the other cases that come into the courtroom are landlord-tenant and small claims. Both of those follow the rules of civil procedure, which is the process that we also follow in family court, generally. And I'm very familiar with the procedural policies and practices that are required in both of those courts. I have not handled a large volume of small claims or landlord-tenant cases. I've had a few of each.
Thank you. So, over the term of my practice, I cut my teeth on assigned counsel criminal cases, and from there went on to do a great deal of civil litigation, including all of the things that we see in Ithaca City Court, frankly, to the point where I'm one of these classic overqualified Ithacans. Landlord-tenant cases, I've had clients with hundreds of units. I've represented tenants in dire straits, even had jury trials in landlord-tenant cases on behalf of tenants. And so that my experience in these civil components of the Ithaca City Court docket, which comprise a significant portion, is substantial. I've done civil litigation, jury trials in federal court, jury trials in state court, trials in the Court of Claims. I have tried civil cases in every level of court in New York State, both state and federal, in the justice courts and in city court. There is literally no kind of civil case that I haven't successfully accomplished.
I've tried every kind of matter in city court as well. I have a bit of a different background from Rick and Christine in that when I graduated from Cornell Law School, I went to a large corporate law firm, so I also have a corporate law background as well. I came to Ithaca, like many, started doing a small solo practice on criminal cases that expanded to, frankly, whatever walked in the door to earn a living. I've done civil cases in city court. I've done traffic. I've done landlord-tenant. You name it, I've done it in city court. And I've also handled other civil claims in terms of car accidents and tort claims as well. So I have a wide breadth of experience in city court and other courts as well.
The next question that we have several of them addressing is drug court. And the question that seems to come up is, why didn't drug court work? And to reduce the numbers down from 12 from 70 participants, how specifically or what specifically do you bring to drug court? Rick?
So it's a very important question, and frankly, it's the question that I've been raising in my campaign. I think I was the first to raise it. I called the Office of Court Administration, and I got the statistics on what drug court was like when Judge Rowley left in 2001 and what's happened to it in the more recent years, where the participant level is 12 to 15 and routinely under 20. Let me tell you, folks, that's not because there are fewer drugs or less alcohol in Ithaca. What's real in Ithaca today is this. This is a newspaper article recently in the Ithaca Journal where the Attorney General is lauding having to hand out heroin antidote kits because heroin is causing citizens in Binghamton to drop like flies, and it's heading this way. There is only one candidate who has published several weeks ago a definitive 4-point plan to revitalize our drug court, and that's me. It's been on my website for weeks. And that plan was developed by talks with Judge Rowley and others who began these courts. I've had those in-depth discussions with them the entire time.
To follow on Rick, there's actually only one candidate who's actually been revitalizing drug court, and that's Judge Peacock, because for the past 2 months I've been in there, first of all, noticing that the numbers were low. But I want to correct something. When we talk about the number being 70, several years ago, that was before we had a super strong family treatment court in county court. That was before we had a super strong felony treatment court. So all the cases were being referred to our local court. So of course the numbers would be higher. At this point, they are lower than they should be. And I guess the approximate number we should be shooting for is about 40 in light of the fact that we have so many other treatment courts that are handling those same cases. I'm just going to briefly go through what I've done. I've already visited other drug courts to find out their best practices, talked to several other judges. I'm revising the policy and procedure manual that we weren't following in drug court as the new judge. I'm establishing a measure of success. My first meeting with the drug court team, I said, hey, what are we measuring? How do we know when we're successful? No one knew. I'm having us collect data so we can evaluate how successful we are with different substances. The district attorney doesn't actually participate in the drug court session. Why is that? I'm meeting with them to do that. And I've had individual meetings with every single team member to get their best ideas and see what we can do. So I'm already doing the work that Rick talked about, and it's more than a 4-point plan, as you can see.
Rick, Seth, and Christine.
Okay.
This is a question about
I didn't get to answer the drug court question yet.
Oh, I'm sorry.
That's okay.
I was looking at questions. I didn't.
This doesn't come off my minute, does it?
No.
Okay, good.
Give her an answer.
That wouldn't be fair either. So to follow the theme, I am the only candidate who's actually been a member of the drug court team. I practiced as the defense attorney for drug court for 3 years, and around, I'd say 2003, 2004 or so, when I was doing it, we were carrying about 20 cases each. There were 2 attorneys, and we had around 20 cases, sometimes a little more, sometimes a little less. I watched that diminish over the time that I was in the court, that those numbers go down. And part of the reason why that happened was because drug court became an unviable option for defense attorneys to recommend to their clients. And what happened was you could get a better deal by taking the jail time at the beginning than you could if you took a bet and did this really hard program and maybe didn't make it all the way through. I would do 2 things. Deal with the screening process that my colleagues have talked about, but I would also make sure that drug court is a viable option for defendants. What that means is you get credit for doing things right. You get credit for clean time. 1 day of clean time is better than a day dirty. 6 months of clean time is a lifetime experience that you're going to be able to look back on, and as judge, I'd give you credit for that time.
Okay. I misunderstood the ordering there myself, so we're going to start with Seth, then go with Christine, and then Rick. This is a question about philosophy. You know, what is your philosophy? It's a concern for police and members of the public that alternatives to incarceration is an easy way out for those convicted of a crime. What's your philosophy on alternatives to incarceration, and do you think this gives somebody an easy pass?
First of all, absolutely not. It's not an easy pass. And my philosophy is you cannot be an effective judge if you don't use alternatives to incarceration. It's as simple as that. That's especially true in Ithaca City Court. Because in City Court, the maximum sentence you could give someone is 1 year because it deals with misdemeanors. So you have to be creative and innovative in finding ways to address people's behavior. And that's why I'll go back to my opening statement when I talked about relationships. One of the things I've already started doing is when I sentence someone to probation, I not only sentence them to check in with their probation officer, but I also sentence them to a community volunteer mentor who can help them deal with some of the basics in life that we all take for granted. Finding a job, getting through tough times. What about a simple phone call with your mentor? Hey, how's the job hunt going? Oh, I remember when I was 25, I was out of work for 8 months too. Those type of things build relationships among community, but more affect people's ability to go out and keep hunting for the jobs. And there's many other things that can happen in that exchange of information about parenting, just about life in general. And many people I speak to are happy and excited about being a volunteer mentor to folks on probation.
People who think that ATI is an easy way out haven't done an ATI. They're intrusive programs oftentimes. They're in your life, and I think that they are very arduous at times. Though I think that it's a legitimate concern of the community that when somebody commits a serious crime, especially a violent crime, is it safe to have that person outside, in our community? And I think that incarceration exists because sometimes it's not safe for someone to be in the community. And as judge, I would use incarceration when it was appropriate. However, I'm not going to tell you that I'm not a strong supporter of ATIs. I think that the ones that we have in Tompkins County are good programs, and oftentimes we need to, instead of being in a situation where your punishment is greater, if you get into a situation where you've made some good choices and then you fall on hard times further down the road, we need to be taking a look at that, at the big picture, and have you made successes as opposed to one, a slip. Relapse is part of recovery, is one of the terminologies that I've learned in the 12 years of working with the recovery community here in Ithaca.
This is a very important question in terms of the reason why I'm running for judge. I've been watching clients and other defendants in city court for a very long time. It's clear to me that 70 to 80% of the crimes that I see in city court are fueled by addiction disorders, alcoholism, drug addiction, mental health questions. These people are not necessarily bad people, but they are people with a bad problem. And what do you do about that? The answer is treatment. Treatment is a tricky thing. Let it not be thought for a moment that the judge at the bench has no influence over how the treatment for city court defendants look when they're sentenced. In order to really know along the spectrum of when somebody is really ready for treatment, really ready, kind of ready, not so ready, and how to craft just the right treatment for each defendant, nothing but a lot of years of experience doing that exact same work will suffice. I'm the only candidate that has the experience doing that exact same work for decades to be able to see and then custom craft a solution to treat defendants and improve the health and safety of our community.
Okay, just a real quick question. How has the assigned counsel program ever banned you? Has the assigned counsel program ever banned you from any courts? Rick?
No, I'm privileged to say that not only have I not been banned from any courts by the assigned counsel program, but I cut my teeth on those cases as a younger lawyer, and as I became more experienced and took on bigger cases and more private and retained cases, I always let the assigned counsel coordinators know that if they ever had a difficult assigned counsel case, a messy felony or a homicide or anything that really required someone with more experience but a willingness to take on a case for the reduced rates that assigned counsel pays, I was always available to do that. And so I've always been available to the assigned counsel program to this day, and the current assigned counsel coordinator knows that, but I have never been banned from any courts by the assigned counsel program.
Christine?
I've never been banned from any court by the assigned counsel program or in any other means that a person could be. I'm welcome in all of the courts in Tompkins County. I also have been a mentor with the assigned counsel program. I've been assigned multiple times to actually work with the new attorneys that are coming into the assigned counsel program, as one of the attorneys that's been working with the panel for a long time, been dedicated to providing those services to clients who cannot afford attorneys. The mentoring process is actually one of the things that led me to decide that this was something that I wanted to do, running for judge, because I found that after a few years of doing that it was happening more and more, became a bigger part of my practice, and that I discovered that I had something more to offer.
The assigned counsel program is one of the best things we have going in Tompkins County, and oftentimes we're looked at as the model for other counties to follow. No, I've never been banned by the assigned counsel program.
There's been some perception that crime is on the rise in the community. We'd like to know if that's your perception and how you might impact on that through the city court. Christine?
I do think that there is a perception that crime is on the rise. I don't know that we have statistics to back that up, or if that's indeed the case. It does seem like there have been more violent crimes in Tompkins County than in years past, in my recent experience. I think that one of the reasons for that is the introduction of harder drugs into our community, and that has created some problems, specifically the opiates and heroin. Again, I think that the way to deal with that, especially at city court where you're not dealing with the most major felonies, is to create the strongest treatment court that you can, so that you can pull people in to the program, hopefully support them in their recovery, support them in becoming productive people in our community, and provide the best, I think, solution to that problem, and the way to make us safest. I think that treatment is a better option for safety than incarceration.
Seth?
We have a serious problem in Ithaca, and frankly, we always have with property crimes. Our petty larceny rate, shoplifting rate, is off the charts. The volume of cases that come through city court is extremely high. We've also had, more recently, a number of particularly unpleasant violent crimes as well. I can't say that the numbers currently are much higher than they have been. Traditionally, every year or so, we'll have an unfortunate homicide. But we do definitely, as a community, need to find ways to build community and build relationships so that we don't have alienated folks in our community who don't see our house, our property, our concerns as their concerns. And again, that's why I go back to this building relationship idea of making connections with young people especially, but also older people as well.
I have a bit of a different take on the situation here in Ithaca. Having been born and raised here, I can tell you from my own experience and from being out talking to voters that crime is on the rise. And that's not a good thing by anybody's imagination. I'm an old liberal, and I worked for OAR for many years helping inmates in the Tompkins County Jail, but I have to tell you, I am disturbed by what I'm seeing in Ithaca. And I believe it can be attributed to a couple of different factors. A major factor is the aura of leniency that many people have perceived the past several years in Ithaca City Court. I don't think it's appropriate to be calling judges by their first name. I think if you go to court, I don't want to make somebody feel like they're coming into their home, and they should feel comfortable there. If they've committed a crime, they should be in a place that has decorum and respect. Treatment, loving compassion, leniency, those are always my watchwords. But this is a court. And people are out there committing crimes that are hurting our neighbors and taking our property. This needs to be addressed, and the more I talk to voters, the more clear it is to me that it's not being addressed sufficiently. Treatment and an air of decorum in Ithaca City Court are big parts of the solution.
I'm sorry, just a minute. How do you feel about offering night court?
What's the order?
Our order is Seth, Christine, and Rick.
Well, since I'm the candidate who first proposed the idea of evening court, obviously I'm in support of it. It goes to my philosophy again. Number one, as judge, you want to have concrete plans in place that affect the ultimate outcomes. But at the same time, you also want to be focused on a customer service model. How do we better serve the citizens of Ithaca? One clear way that we're not serving people is if you work during the day and you don't have job flexibility, like many people on the lower end of the pay scale do not have, you're penalized because you miss a day's pay, and then potentially you receive a fine by the court. Now, at our last debate, we raised this idea. Both of the other candidates says, great idea, it will increase fairness, it's a fantastic idea, and then immediately they said, that can't be done. And I told them I'm not that kind of judge. I'm the kind of judge who's going to look for good ideas and push to make them happen. Yes, there are hurdles to getting it done, but it's not impossible because we used to have evening court right here in the same court, in city court. So it's a great idea that was here before and should be brought back because it better serves our customers, our citizens who live in this community. So I'm a strong supporter of evening court.
Christine?
I was one of the people at the last forum who said that it was a good idea, but that it can't be done. And I'll tell you why. I say that because I am committed to walking away from this election, good, bad, or indifferent, with my head held high and not making promises that I cannot produce. And this is just, frankly, something that is not going to happen anytime soon. Now, maybe when the economy improves, but right now, the Office of Court Administration is laying people off. If people retire, their jobs are not being filled. We are in a situation where some of the most respected judges in our community, long-term judges, Judge Rossiter, would not be able to get an extra 15 minutes of jury deliberations. So while I applaud the idea of trying to make the court more accessible to our community, and I would try to make that possible whenever, if necessary, we can issue summons so that people can get excused from work and they would have a means of proving that to their employer. But right now, we're not going to get evening or weekend court in city.
Rick?
Thank you. It's my experience that trying a lot of cases throughout the state of New York and being aware that it is only by virtue of the good graces of the Office of Court Administration that courts open and close. The idea of evening court is logistically a near impossibility at this time. When I try cases, I've got judges in high-level courts with serious crimes and serious civil cases, $1 million cases, telling the jury they have to go home at 4:45 because they can't get an extra 15 minutes from the security guards. They have to be approved by the highest administrative judge, and they're under orders not to approve any overtime. If there's a way to lobby for that, I'm all in favor of it. But frankly, traffic tickets often can be handled by mail. And the more serious crimes, I'm not so sure that people ought not be imposed upon for a couple of hours of their life to actually appear in court and address the matter firsthand.
And we'll go with Rick.
Just answer that and just explain. We already have evening court. Every night I'm called in almost for arraignments after hours. So it certainly is possible. And I just had to point that out, that we already are having court in the evenings. The courthouse is open. When there's a need to have an arraignment, I don't have to check with court security. I open the courthouse and it's public and we do an arraignment. So it's certainly possible. And I just had to make that clear, that the court is open after hours when the judge says it's open.
Thank you, Seth. Would either of you, Christine or Rick, want to do a rebuttal to that?
That's different, is the bottom line. It's different. That's imposing upon the judge, who's a salaried employee. The security officers that have to be there are not salaried employees, the court clerks that have to be there. And we're not talking about showing up for a midnight arraignment. We're talking about holding court for a number of hours.
That's what Seth is talking about. There's a brand new innovation. It's relatively recent, where all the courts, even out in the outlying districts, have to have prompt arraignments for people accused of crimes, and so the judges have to come in, which all three of us are prepared to do at midnight sometimes, for a 10-minute arraignment or a 5-minute arraignment or a 20-minute arraignment. That's a different story than having an entire session of court.
It's the 3 a.m.s. I'm not worried about the midnights.
This time we're going to go Rick, Christine, and Seth. Some citizens have the impression that our city court judges are working more with the community who are getting evicted due to gentrification. What are your thoughts on that?
Could you repeat the question?
I said some people who live in the city of Ithaca perceive that we are working with a community who are getting evicted due to gentrification. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, I can tell you, as someone who's done landlord-tenant cases for a very long time, in fact, I have to say that if I looked at all of the lawyers in the city of Ithaca or the county of Tompkins, I can count on one hand the lawyers who are more familiar with Article 7 of the Real Property Actions and Proceedings Law than I am. I've been doing these cases a very long time. There are two main bases for evictions. They're called summary proceedings. The first is a holdover, when someone has exceeded their lease term. And the second is non-payment of rent. They both have very specific and detailed rules for when somebody can be evicted. And because this kind of proceeding is in derogation of the common law, which in plain English means it's kind of more than the law usually allows, the technicalities are very specific. The people involved have to cross all their T's and dot all their I's to even have jurisdiction before the court. And at that point, the court has to make very specific findings about whether somebody hasn't paid their rent or whether they've held over. So gentrification and classism are issues we always look for in terms of justice in the broader sense. But in my considerable experience in landlord-tenant cases, those are not issues that any competent judge would ever take into consideration in an eviction case.
I agree with Rick regarding the law on the issue of landlord-tenant. I would also say that I don't have any ties to landlords or property owners. I have no ties to any special interest groups in the Ithaca community. There would be no partiality in my court as far as that goes. And I would take any case that came before me that meant that somebody who was either because of their age or because of the situation where the property owner thought that they could get a better rents and that sort of thing, that they were held to the absolute letter of the law and that people aren't put out on the street. The issue of homelessness in Ithaca is real, and we can't be doing anything in our courts that is contributing to that's outside of the legal ramifications of what landlords are entitled to do.
I can't speak to gentrification because, frankly, it's improper to bring that into any decision. But I can speak to the idea that, as judge, you must balance many things. One of the things you have to balance is, in a community like Ithaca, we have many small landlords. We have many family members who simply bought a simple rental property, and if they have a tenant who is not paying their rent, who pays the rent? In addition, you have to think about the tenant who sometimes is not properly serviced by their landlord. And you have to have a balanced view of both and understand how serious it is to each party. Someone's living situation is at stake, but also someone has to pay, the landlord has to continue to pay that mortgage. So you really have to make sure that if there's an eviction proceeding, it's technically right. Most landlords know how to do it, or if not, they hire attorneys who help them do it. Most tenants understand their obligation. So you just have to be fair and understand that every landlord is not some evil person just trying to milk people for money, and also every tenant's not trying to get over on their landlord. So you have to be balanced, and that's what I've been doing as city court judge.
Okay. Do we have any other questions that have not been brought to me? Okay. This will be last question, and it's sort of a philosophical question. And we'll go with Seth, Rick, and then Christine. It's some people's perception that our civil rights are being eroded. What would you concretely do to stop that erosion today?
The first thing I mentioned in my opening was abiding by the law. The law offers us all many protections. And as judge, what you're required to do is make the difficult call. Make the unpleasant, hard call when there's a difficult drug case, and because the officer didn't do something correct, you may have to let that person go. Now, that's not a pleasant thing to think of as a citizen, but as judge, you have to have the independence and the strength of character to make those decisions. I've made those decisions. I've pushed issues. I've brought claims defending people's civil rights as an attorney. I've brought claims that were extremely difficult and unpopular. Many of you may have heard about the case I handled where a woman was banged around in the back of Ithaca Police Department car. That's a hard case to bring, but I had to stand on my own and bring that case to protect her right, but also to protect everyone's right in this room. I'm committed to that as a person. I've been committed to that as an attorney, and I'll be committed to that as a judge, to making the tough calls and following the law.
Thank you.
Rick?
When I was putting together my website, I was thinking back on what kinds of cases would be significant and meaningful with respect to becoming a judge. And so I have a link on my website with, I think, 4 out of many cases that I've done over the past decades. Section 1983 cases, they're called, in federal court, where you have to sue a government actor for violating somebody's civil rights under color of state law. Prison cases on behalf of inmates who have been treated in ways that just shouldn't happen. Lawsuits against school board members for racism and treating some of their employees like less than human. This has been something that I've done for my entire career. I would bring that same spirit into Ithaca City Court because the Constitution is very dear to me. People's rights are very dear to me. It's something I've fought for on behalf of the underprivileged and the underdog all my life. And if I'm privileged to be on the bench, you can rest assured nobody's civil rights are going to be violated on my watch.
For the first 15 years that I was with my wife, Sue, we couldn't get married because the law didn't allow for it. We didn't have a right under the law to get married. I think that civil rights are huge. They've touched on my life in really important ways. And I think that there's something to be said for, well, the LGBT community is making strides right now, but there are other issues that are eroding over time. There's a recent case, and I apologize for not having the case site. I'll put it up on my website if anybody wants to check, where the right to remain silent has become a smaller right than it used to be. You now have to be very specifically asked a question. You have to assert that right and say, I am asserting my right to remain silent in reaction to a question. Just remaining silent is not enough. So clearly that's less than we used to have prior to this decision. It's a small erosion, but that's been happening for years now. And I think that the community, the court has to follow the law. I'll follow the law. It's up to the community and the legislature to deal with those issues. Talk to your legislators.
Okay, that closes our questioning section. Now we're going to 2-minute closing comments. And again, we drew straws here. Christine, you're the first person.
Okay. Some of these things we touched on tonight and some not. I wanted to point out a few things that make me different from some of the other candidates. As I mentioned before, I am the only candidate who actually was on a drug court team for a number of years. And as I mentioned, I have a very specific plan and idea about how to increase the participation in that program, not just because it's worth it, we want to keep the program alive, because the program actually does good in our community. It helps to keep us safe, and it helps to put people back into the community in productive ways. And as I said before, I believe that clean time is worthy no matter how long it lasts, even if it's not the entire time that you're in the drug court program. I'm the only candidate who has professional experience specifically dealing with diverse populations. I worked with people with disabilities. I've worked with people on income inequality issues. I became a lawyer because I was working with a welfare rights group, and the attorney who was representing us in a case was suing the Department of Social Services on behalf of welfare recipients and the hassle that they were receiving from the department. This was in Monroe County, and it was his example that made me want to become a lawyer in the first place. But working with the population of indigent people that I've been doing for the past 12 years, specifically, I've worked on race issues and gender issues and discrimination on the basis of disability and sexual orientation with the Human Rights Commission. I'm also the only candidate that has spent years now working as a law guardian. We call it now an attorney for the children, working on the many different issues that we represent children on, children from the age of birth until some of them are up to 18 in the family court system, on all the different issues that they show up there on. I am committed to making, if I get this opportunity to be the Ithaca City Court judge, I'm committed to making the court a court that honors and respects every individual that comes before it, because it's only through honor and respect that we're going to have meaningful resolutions of cases. Thank you.
Again, thank you for listening to us tonight. I'm the only candidate who's actually been tested as judge. I've been in the position now for several months, and I urge you all not to listen to what I say about myself. Find someone who's appeared in front of me as a defendant, as an attorney, and I'm sure you'll find that they say I'm fair, respectful, courteous, knowledgeable about the law. Don't listen to me. Find someone, when you're making a decision and looking for which candidate is best, find someone who's appeared in city court and ask them about me. And I'm guaranteed you'll have a good response, and you'll hear that I'm the right person for this position, because I've actually been doing it. I want to talk about youth court. And this is not one of Judge Peacock's pie-in-the-sky ideas. This is an idea that is having success nationwide. This is an idea that we not only need to bring here, but in fact, Rick can reminisce about old Ithaca, but we also had a youth court in Ithaca. We need a youth court back in Ithaca. Our youth are struggling. We need to find a way to engage with them. What youth courts involves is allowing young people to use positive peer pressure and a restorative justice model to get better results. They buy into the system. They form relationships. There's a training component. They have to be trained by the judge. They're trained by a local attorney. And they're trained by law enforcement. Those are relationships. You spend time with young people. You have relationships. The community service model is different in youth court. The community service will be an actual community service project. It won't be picking up trash on the highway. It'll be building a garden together. The judge will be there. Judge Peacock will be there with the young person, with community members. That's what it takes to form a strong community. That's what we can do in Ithaca. We're unique in that sense. Please vote for me. We can make this happen. Thank you.
Thank you. I want to thank everybody, including the League of Women Voters and my colleagues, for the privilege of being here tonight. This means a lot to me. This is my hometown. I grew up on the streets of the city, and there's nothing more important to me than making sure the city is a healthy and a safe place to live. I see solutions for the problems that we face: drug addiction, mental health, crime on our streets, gun violence, kids in trouble. But these solutions are going to require a special ability. They're going to require a depth of experience. And with all due respect, 3 months on the bench or 3 years as a defense lawyer in drug court isn't enough. 24 years of paying attention vigorously to drug courts, to issues of addiction and rehabilitation, to issues of community health, wellness, and therefore safety. That's been my entire career. I didn't have on my career path the plan of becoming a city court judge, or any judge for that matter, although this is the only judgeship I would ever seriously consider. People came up to me who saw my track record with offender aid and restoration, working with inmates in the county jail. People came up to me from the community of color and civil rights activists who knew my civil rights litigation history. People came up to me aggressively from the addiction and rehabilitation communities and said, "Rick, there are skills that are required to make a change in city court from the same old of the past 20 years. It's not an accident that city treatment court has gone from 70 to 12. It's not an accident that city court is viewed as a place of leniency. I talked to an old friend of mine, an old street buddy of mine just the other day. He said when the kids come up here from the city to commit crime, they have an expression. They say, we're going to come up and take a bite, because Ithaca is just a juicy apple for them. You know, that defendant in my court is in trouble. But the defendant who's a nonviolent addict, who's there because he has developed a habit, because people like this are coming into our town and selling drugs and selling violence and exploiting our women, our young women, for their apartments and their cars, it's not okay for me. I know what the solutions that are needed in this town are, and I have the qualifications to make them happen.
Christine?
Already did.
Oh, we're done. The League of Women Voters would like to thank the candidates for coming and participating in this forum so that our citizens can know where you stand and they can vote as informed citizens. We want to thank our WRFI Community Radio for broadcasting this so even people who aren't attending can hear. And lastly, but most importantly, I appreciate and the League wants to thank you who have come out to this meeting tonight and raised these questions. Thank you.
You've been listening to a September 3rd forum featuring candidates for Ithaca City Court Judge presented at the Tompkins County Public Library and sponsored by the Tompkins County League of Women Voters. The forum was moderated by the League's president, Kay Sharp. Candidates Seth Peacock, Christine Shaw, and Rick Wallace, all Democrats, will face off tomorrow, September 9th, in the Democratic primary. As the Democrats are running unopposed, the primary will determine the Ithaca City Court Judge for the next 10 years. WRFI Community Radio is proud to have brought you this exclusive broadcast of the event, as we did the August 26th Judges Forum held at the Greater Ithaca Activity Center. Technical support for tonight's broadcast was provided by Dan Alloy and Joe Romano. Thanks for listening. For WRFI Community Radio, I'm producer Felix Tietelbaum.